Hello. So, James, you're already on. Great. I want to talk about race day nutrition. Thank you for joining us. Right before we get started here, while people are joining, I wanted to touch a little bit on pre-race nutrition a little bit. I also wanted to address those people that might watch this on YouTube later. So, thank you for joining. Thank you all those for joining. I do always post my periscopes onto my YouTube channel, which is The Blonde Runner. So if you missed this or you watched it and you want to rewatch it, I always have it on there so you can kind of, there's going to be probably a lot of information we cover here. So some of the things that I want you guys letting me know are what questions that you have particularly. I know that some people wanted to learn about triathlon nutrition and marathon nutrition, so we'll definitely cover those too. But if you have a race coming up and you have particular questions, please feel free to ask. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll find that you won't be able to see what people are asking, and I'll be alluding to it in hearts, and so you won't know what that is. But if you're well versed in Periscope, then you know what that means. But I encourage you to go there and watch. So let's start with nutrition. So the one thing that I wanted to say is your pre-race nutrition, what you have before a race, will affect what you have during a race. So I wanted to stick to race day nutrition today, but I do want to allude to an article that I have on my website that will cover pre-race nutrition. So that's really important. It is key, and it will affect your race. So you just go onto my website at blonderunner.com, and then you plug in on the right side, there's a search portion, and you plug in, thank you for joining. There's a search portion that you can go pre-race nutrition, and it will talk about that. And so you can know what you need to get before your race. That's super important. So when it comes to race, well, let's talk about marathon nutrition first. One thing I will say, and this goes for all nutrition, is you need to practice in training. To fine-tune, it's trial and error with everybody. Something that might work for me may not work for you. So the important thing is to test it out. And different products people tolerate better than other products. For me particularly, I like to use a lot of different products in my training. I have my favorites, but I like to use different products because races offer different products. Plus, what if you forget your nutrition and now you have to take something on course that you're not used to and you've never tried it? You don't know if it works for you. So if you're always trying new things, then you know if you tolerate it or not. So with marathons particularly, depends on, of course, how hydrated you are coming into the race, but you also need to factor in what the environment is like. If it's really humid, that's going to affect how much hydration you get. If it's really hot, that's going to affect the hydration you get. And if you come into it depleted, please don't come into it depleted. Welcome, thanks for joining. One thing that I will say is a lot of people tend to overhydrate before races. They get they want to hydrate so well, thanks for all the hearts, that they end up overhydrating. They get a condition called hyponatremia. And I've actually had this condition before. I remember my college coach, I was recruited to run for the University of Utah. I also ran for Utah State, and that's where I finished up my education. But when I ran for them, we were racing in Arizona, and it was hot. And coach was like, you guys need to drink. And of course I totally drank. But I drank so much, I was peeing all the time. And I was depleting my electrolytes. And so I did horrible in that race. And I still was like third on our team or something, but I normally was a lot faster than I was. And I had gotten that condition called hyponatremia. So I diluted my blood of all my electrolytes. So that's the first thing I want to talk about is electrolytes. This is honestly the problem with a lot of people that can't finish a marathon. It's because of electrolytes. It has nothing to do with maybe their everything was right. Hydration, what they ate was fine. It's just they didn't have the right proportions of electrolyte. Now, electrolyte is in a lot of products. I mean, you get it in your Gatorades or your beverages. You get it in... Then you can also get it in tablet form, and that's really valuable for a triathlon, and I'll talk about that. But a lot of people kind of underestimate what they need when it comes to electrolyte. I find I perform a lot better with electrolyte. So some of the products that I like to use that I want to touch on, and I have a lot of products I'm going to show you, is this is my favorite. It's actually made in northern Utah, and I'm from Utah, so this is called Elite Electrolyte. and it's just drops that you put in water. I prefer to make my own beverage, and then I can control how much sugar is in it. This is another thing that I really like. It's Tablites. This is something that I use for triathlon. These drops and things can be put in your drinks as you're racing, and a lot of times, I mean, if you don't have it available to you, there's a pocket bottle actually you can put it in your pocket. But you can also carry a tablet and just take one of those during a race. Now, you have to practice with it though. So you can get a stomachache if you're not used to it. But you need to, the way you figure out your nutrition is by documenting what you're doing when you're doing it. And so I always document after a workout what I did and how I felt. Now, how I felt could have been influenced by other things, but if you start documenting, you're going to see trends. You're going to say, gosh, I used that certain product and I felt really good. There are going to be things that work better for you. So electrolyte is key. Now, depending on your sweat rate, how much electrolyte you need, it's going to be based on that. But and you can actually test your sweat rate. Just look it up online. How do I test my sweat rate? It'll tell you how to do it. It's really easy. You know, you go for a certain amount of time and you weigh yourself and all that. It's really easy to figure out how much water you're losing, but it does depend on that day. So think about that. Okay, so let's get into more specifics when it comes to nutrition for a marathon. So most of the time when you look at gel packs, they'll tell you that you need to take a gel every 45 minutes. They often have you take a gel 15 minutes from starting the race as well. And so there are a ton of gels. I would say gels are probably the common thing that are used. But like I said before, I use a ton of product in my training. So I have some favorites. The things I like, E-Gel are great because they're larger packs. Those are more for triathlon. Most of these, GOO, there's Hammer, there's V-Fuel, there's Cliff, there's, you know, Honey Stinger. There's so many different kinds. Most all of them are about 90 to 100 calories. So you kind of have to figure out how many calories you might need, and it depends on your size. But what I would say with gels is the difference is going to be the viscosity. So some gels are a little more viscous, a little thicker than others. Power Gel is a really thinner gel. The V-Fuel is a thinner gel. So if you tend to get kind of, it's too gelatinous, then have one of those that are better that way. Or I always time it so I have water after for sure. Usually for me, for longer distance events, like a half marathon, I actually encourage athletes to walk through the aid stations and get the hydration they need. The mistake I see a lot of people make is they run right through that aid station and they don't take anything. I encourage you to take something at every aid station, whether it be, I usually alternate, I go a little heavier on the water. I tend to do better with a little lower calorie for me. But you're pretty safe if you take your first gel, I would say within the first 3 miles. And then you have to just see how many gels might work for you. And it depends on how long you're out there. So you do have to factor in, you know, if you're going to be out there for a 3-hour marathon, it's a little different than a 4 or 5 or 6-hour marathon. And that's why they say every 45 minutes take a gel. So that would be, you know, that would be a good rule of thumb, I would say. But you should test it in your training. Another thing that's good to do is look it up on whatever race you're doing on the website. It will tell you what they're serving. I like to look at what they're serving. Whoever their sponsor is probably what type of gels they're going to be offering. If you know you don't tolerate that very well, then you may want to bring your own. You can pin it in shorts. I've seen people, they have little loops on race belts. People wear fanny pack type things or a hydration belt. There's lots of great things that you can do for that. And I think what's key in a marathon with nutrition is you don't just go on the fly. I'll just do whatever everybody around me is doing. You really do need to practice it. I see people doing all kinds of things I wouldn't do. I stick to my plan. Whatever I've been training with and I know I tolerate, then I'm going to do that. There's also things that are more solid, which I find some people do a little better with. Like the Honey Stinger, a lot of these like gels or they're not gels, I'm sorry, they're like blocks or chomps is what they call them. Cliff, these are one of mine I use a lot. They also have these sports beans. And so another thing that's a little more solid is the Stinger waffle. Those are really good. So there's a lot of product. You just got to see, do you tolerate a gel more or do you tolerate more of the solid product? And honestly, I a lot of times will alternate. what I'm having, and I see what what's going to be on course, and I see if that's going to work for me. And so, but I do train with these things, so I do know what I should take or not take. And you know, at this point, I have preference of flavor, so sometimes I like to get the flavor I want if they have gels that they're passing out. So again, you know, in terms of hydration, so electrolyte is really important. A lot of these products have electrolyte in them, so you have to factor in how much electrolyte you may need. But a general rule of thumb for me with water and hydration and how much I get, I try to get 1 to 3 ounces per mile. So I kind of look at it per mile and I break it down that way. And some people can tolerate more, some people can't tolerate that much. I think you can learn to tolerate more, and the higher number would be on a hotter day. If it's windy, you're going to get dehydrated faster as well. When it comes to Ironman, half Ironman, I am training for my first Ironman will be in 4.5 weeks. I'm very excited. Ironman Maryland. You can track me. My number is 745. So if you're interested, I need all the good vibes. But I will kind of tell you what I've been doing in training, which is the plan, of course, for the race. Half Ironman is very similar with what I do. For me personally, and it depends on your size. I'm 5'4", I weigh about 122 pounds. If you're larger than me or you're smaller than me, you're going to have to adjust the calories for you. And you have to see what you tolerate. Some people might tolerate more than me. I tend to do better on a little lower calories. So things I've been having lately, and I kind of have my favorites. Right now, I've been really loving these Trader Joe blueberry cereal bars. I use kind of regular stuff too in my training and racing. I like these chewy granola bars too. That is something I might have for breakfast. For me, a lot of people will have oatmeal or something, but I find that that's a little heavy. And so it is important, the pre-race nutrition for Ironman, half Ironman. I mean, you need 500 to 800 calories. I would say 2 to 3 or even 4 hours in increments before that race, adding up to maybe 800 calories for my size. And so I have things like that will, it's kind of an easily digestible grain. And like I mentioned, thanks for joining again. On my website, I do have that pre-race nutrition, article that you can refer to. So blonderunner.com, and just plug it in on the search. And then I kind of share some of those things that I have. So other things so I get my 500 to 800 calories before my race. And then I get into we're talking Ironman, or half Ironman. Then obviously for the swim, you're not eating anything or drinking anything. That's what the breakfast did, is got you through that swim. And then as soon as I'm on my bike, I try to rehydrate first. So the first thing I want to do is get water as soon as I can on the bike. I have a hydration system that I can suck through a straw, and that's what I use, which is called a speed fill. And if you're on Facebook, it's great to connect there as well, and you can tell me things you're interested in learning. But you can see that picture on my bike, and you can see how I highly recommend that hydration system. It allows me to drink through a tube while I'm in aero, so I'm not having to fiddle with bottles. And matter of fact, I think that's how a lot of people wreck, is trying to put their bottles back, or maybe you drop one, and you don't want to not have your water bottle, especially for long course events. So for me, I tend to tolerate anywhere from 15 to 25 ounces per hour. Now that's for my size, so if you're bigger, you're probably going to need more water than me. But I kind of do it per hour on the bike. I don't calculate what I already swam. I do want to hydrate right away, and usually within the first 10 minutes, I'm starting to get a solid food in me. Some of the things I use, and I do use a variety of products, I like some basic stuff. I find I do a little bit better with some fat and protein, because the satiety, I get so hungry during the long events that it's uncomfortable. And if I just have only carbohydrate, it just doesn't do it for me, and eventually my stomach just doesn't hold it well. So I do products like this, one of my favorites, and they're crunchy, and then you got to be careful you don't inhale one of these, but I do use these peanut butter pretzels. These are just like a Costco thing. I use them in my training, and I get a little bit of those during the race to help with satiety, but I don't want to replace a lot of the calories that I need for carbohydrate. Your body and your gut can only absorb so much, and you can tolerate a lot more calories on the bike than you can like during a marathon or anything, because that blood, you'll notice if you've ever done heart rate training, you'll notice your heart, it doesn't get as high on the bike, even when you push it, than on the run. And the reason for that is the muscles themselves are, they're closer to your heart, and they're pumping the blood for you. Their movement is so much larger than when you run, you're kind of this small pattern. And so it kind of helps pump the blood. And also the blood is more blood is available to you to digest foods on the bike than would be on the run. So kind of keep that in mind. So it's really important to get, even for the marathon or half marathon and the Ironman or half Ironman, it's important to get nutrition on the bike. That's going to make or break your marathon or half, in my opinion. So I kind of figure everything out I need for every 15 minutes. So like, I'll have a piece of this, a piece of this, a piece of that, and I have it all in a bento box in the front. Other things that I utilize are like blocks or the gels or something that I usually get these, after I get some water in me, I'll have those first because I want to get some sugar back in my system. I want to get my blood sugar. I want to maintain a good sugar level in my blood, a blood level of sugar. Not overdo it, but enough where I'm always feeling good and I'm not going to bonk. Other things I'll have in that bag, sometimes I'll put the beans in there. I also use something called Electro Bites. These are kind of a salty, after a while, when you're out there for a long time, the sugar is like, you don't want any more sugar. You just need something salty. And these are actually made with coconut and potato starch, so they kind of last. I would use a little bit at a time though, because you don't want to use a bunch at one time. This is a great product. I actually have a discount code, Blonde Runner, all in caps, that you can utilize on Elite Electrolyte or Electro Bites, and those are good. Let's see, other things I put in that bag are often I will use pieces of granola bar. Sometimes if I feel like I'm going to need that more satiety, I'll even put little pieces of protein bars in there. But I do want to keep it high in carbohydrate on the bike. And then I just calculate, for me, 150 to 200 up to 250 calories per hour. If I do a whole lot more than that, I'm not feeling super good. So and there are some people that have a whole lot more than that. If you're bigger, you're going to need a lot more than me. But the key is for you to practice it. And I calculate it per hour on the bike. And then when I get to the run, I usually try to get a little of the solids at the end of the bike. That will help me through the run. I tolerate a little more of a liquid during run, just because I have less blood available to digest. And I go a little heavy on the water at the beginning of the run again, because I would have had something more solid right at the tail end of the bike anyway to get on. And so, and then I do take some of the electrolyte tablets during the event. One of the things, there are tons of tablets out there. I particularly like these because they're really condensed. So I only have to take, maybe 1 to 4 over that 5.5 hour ride or your 112 mile ride. Which I don't want to have to swallow anything more than I need to, because you get sick of doing that. So I like these are so condensed. There's other tablets out there that you have to take, so many. You have to take 10 an hour. It's ridiculous. I don't know why they don't condense them more. These are a little larger pill, but they, I wish they had a gel cap on them or something, but they don't. But they're still, overall, I'm taking less of them, and so for me, that's a good thing. So hopefully this gave you some information on at least where you should start when it comes to nutrition. Again, you definitely need to practice it in training. Look it up on the website and the race website and see what they're serving, and then practice with that. And then practice the hydration and how you're going to take that water in your race. Let's see, and if you can't find what they're offering in the race and where their aid stations are, inquire. Ask the race director. As a race director, I appreciate that. It tells me what people are looking for, and then I'll start putting things up like that. So I think for the most part, that's kind of the general of what you need to do. Hopefully that was helpful for you, and hopefully you'll start really incorporating these things into your training and trial and error. See what works for you. document, take notes on your workout, what you did, and what I put down all the details. Like at 42 minutes, I took a gel, and it was this type of gel, and I even put down the flavor. Then I can get a feel for what I like, what works well out there on the road. So good luck in your training, and thank you for. Oh, we got a question. What about the day before? What do you do? So one thing I'll mention the day before races is you don't, traditionally we say, hey, eat high fiber. You want a lot of fruits and vegetables. That's really good for you. And yes, I would say that for the most part. But the day before a race, you want to kind of avoid the fibers. You don't want so much fiber that you're having to go to the bathroom in the race. So I would say stay away from the fibers and go with more of the higher carbohydrate, starchier foods. And you've heard of carb loading and all that. That you are going to want some things like that. I do get some proteins as well. I think beans are really good because they're high in carbohydrate and protein. They do have some fiber in there, so you don't want to overdo it. But you definitely don't want to overdo fiber. I sip throughout the day, the day before the race. Depends on what race and how long I'm doing, if it's a long race or not, how much I have. But I just nibble through the day. I'm eating a lot more calories that day before a race, and calories depend on you. So pizza works for some people. It's actually really high in carbohydrate. So that thick crust especially, and it's got the sodium in it and things like that. So for some people that works really good. Others like good old spaghetti. A lot of times for me, I do potatoes and lentils are really good a combination because I'm getting all those branched chain amino acids and things like that I like. Plus, it's got the potassium in it, which I find a lot of people are pretty low on their regular diet. Now, if you're not sure about that, I am on. I don't know if any of you guys are on MyFitnessPal, but that's how I calculate a lot of my calories. I actually calculated at the pace that I want to go how many calories I'm going to burn during that race, and obviously, I'm not replacing. For me, it's about 5,500 calories. I am not getting 5,500 calories in that race. I think some people make that mistake and think, oh, whatever's going out needs to come in. You cannot tolerate that much. Maybe you're tolerating 25 to 35% of what you're actually burning. So do kind of keep that in mind. But definitely try different things. See what works well for you. And if you've got something that works for you, stick to that. You don't have to do what your friend is doing. Thank you so much for joining. So first half, you're doing your first half. Excellent. So practice, practice, practice. And don't be afraid to walk through aid stations. Get the hydration so it's not all over you. I've done that lots of races, and I still do well. So you can walk a little bit, and as long as you're getting the hydration and everything that you need, in the end, you'll be passing all the people that passed you and why they weren't getting it. So I hope you all have a great day, and I hope this was helpful for you. And please join again so we can teach you more things about all this great stuff. Have a healthy day.